Day 1825. Arcadius wandered through a valley of foregone souls, the wearers of his lifetime of battle invisible upon his half-mortal body. It had been months, and yet the lone warrior had encountered neither man nor woman for what felt like a millennia. There was only one more being he had to vanquish. This he was sure, for his trial from Hades to be complete. But where this single entity was occupying themselves, he simply couldn't be certain. It was the most tribulating ordeal he'd ever encountered since embarking on this quest. Not even vaporizing 99% of the underworld had been this much of a nuisance. He dropped to his knees, summoned a fire with a methodical flick of the wrist, and sat. Although Arcadius himself wouldn't be able to tell within this arena, nightfall must have surely been nearing, and even with his godlike powers, his body still ached for sleep. He was still largely mortal, after all. He formed a half-hearted defensive charm and laid on his back upon an extremely lavish bed of crumbling bones. With that, his eyelids drooped, darkening the man's vision. It was then Arcadius was on the verge of being submerged in a sleep so deep the primordial Hypnos would have grown jealous of it, that he heard it. Immediately, he jolted straight upwards, eyeing an approaching silhouette nearing from a distance. A shadow-like form's arm jerked towards itself repeatedly, and it didn't take Arcadius long to realize he was being beckoned forth. There was no need for the gesture, he concluded. Either way, their head would be his, not long before the sweet taste of triumph. "You've kept yourself well hidden," Arcadius admitted, approaching the figure's cloak back. "Such time you have wasted to valiantly avoid your fate. And yet, in the end, you shall all surmise to vapid efforts." Dark magic swarmed the entirety of Arcadius's arm, and without a drab of remorse he swung. The figure turned, and as its hood drooped, so did Arcadius's palm. "Asclepius!" The old man bore a great staff of oak, the scales of a intertwining snake gleaming eerily despite the lack of an obvious sword of light. "So, we meet, Arcadius. The gods have been overseeing this trial, and I for one have been particularly keen to meet you." Arcadius stumbled back, and for the first time since his direct confrontation with Hades, felt genuine, innate terror. "No! No, 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 no!" he roared fiercely. "I never agreed to battle gods, let alone one of your history." "You do not have to face me in combat," Asclepius insisted gently, in a tone of much sagacity. "I only appear before you to grant you a little insight from one past necromancer to another. Once our talk is over, I shall retreat back to Olympus, and your victory is assured." "Damn you, god of medicine!" Arcadius spat, utterly furious. "I don't care if you cast me down from where I stand. I shall not take advice from one who wishes to intervene in concerns which do not involve them." Sighing, the god loosened his grip upon the rod, and then dropped his mane of formality ever so slightly. "Look, Arcadius," he began, "despite your insistence on my departure, I must persist. I used to be half-mortal, much like yourself, before I ascended to godhood. But that was only after my death at the hands of Zeus. Do you know why the king of gods struck him with his very lightning bolt?" "Of course, but I see no value in your constant lecture." "I dabbled in necromancy. You are very lucky to have been allowed to live with as many offense to the gods as you carry, Arcadius. Cease your foolish plans. Accept your eternity into Elysium." Before Arcadius could complain further, the god began to fade into a self-induced beam of light. He was tempting to assault Asclepius' passing particles, but restrained himself, as difficult as it was. "Farewell, damned warrior." Only the whistling of a lingering breeze resounded across the empty field of bone, rustling at Arcadius's clothing in a passive motion. Arcadius merely stood wordless, depressingly somber for a man who had just achieved their greatest desire.